So I first want to look at, here are some of the different methods that we could use to collect the data. Okay, so we could, for example, go and do a face-to-face interview. So going to the middle of a shopping centre and walking around with a clipboard asking people, could you please participate in my survey? Another method would be pen and paper. So looking at printing out questionnaires and it's having them all stacked somewhere and just people can come along, pick one up, fill it in. We could do them via internet. So you know how when you're just going to a website and up pops an app, could you take a few minutes to do my survey? That's quite a common one. Email, you can send them out to through email, like our business students tend to do when they're looking at their new products. Or you can make phone calls and ring people up and ask them, look, if you've got a few minutes of your time to do this survey for me. So those are some of the different methods. Now, each of these different methods have different advantages or disadvantages. And so some of the things that we want to think about are bias, accuracy, response rate, cost, the time to administer, how far I can cover the geographical area, whether sensitive questions are being asked, whether I need to include videos or sound to collect my data, and which method best suits. So, for example, if I was to look at a telephone survey, all right, so if I was to look at my phone survey and say, right, what are some advantages or disadvantages with my phone survey? Well, one of the things that we can think about is that not everybody has a landline, and so that makes it harder to get in contact with everyone. And it might be that the people that we can't get in contact have a different opinion or would give us different data. So, for example, if I was calling during the day, we need to think about, well, who would be at home during the day? So, for example, older retired people might be more likely to be at home. Young mums with young children might be at home. And then think about who won't be at home. So students at school won't be at home unless they're ill. People who work a normal working hour day and work, they would not be at work. So you're not gathering information from those several groups of people there. So you get some groups that are overrepresented, some groups that are underrepresented. Some of the advantages of it is that it's a quick thing to do. There's random digit dialing, which is that we're in a computer system, just randomly chooses a bunch of numbers and calls that telephone. And either somebody picks up or somebody doesn't, and then if it doesn't, they randomly dial another number. So the process of making phone calls is quite quick, but it can cost because you're obviously paying for people's time to make the phone calls, and that's up in your customer call centres. So those are some of the advantages or disadvantages that we could consider with that particular method. And there's similar kinds of advantages, disadvantages from the other methods as well. Internet, quick and easy. As you load a website, that jumps up, but the response rate of that will be very, very low. Most people will just choose not to respond to a survey online. Whereas face-to-face interviews, you get much better response rates. But because you're asking more people to go and collect the data to get a big enough sample size, then that cost is an issue that comes with it. If I'm trying to collect information on sensitive topics, then often I prefer face-to-face interviews because people are far more likely to be truthful with me face-to-face than they are if I'm just doing an online or an email or phone call survey. Think about if you're trying to tell a lie to your parents. It's always much harder to tell them face-to-face. No, I've done my homework, Mum, really I have. It's much harder to tell them that than it is to just send them a text message and say, no, yeah, I've done my homework, Mum, I'm all good. So all of those good things that we want to think about. A couple of things I want to just talk in a little bit more detail is this idea about bias. And there are 3 particular biases that we just need to be aware of. One of them is this thing called interviewer bias. So if we are doing a face-to-face interview with somebody, then depending on who the interviewer is that's asking the questions, that can make a difference to the type of response that you would get. So think about, for example, if it was a sensitive topic. Say it was asking questions about how much alcohol you'd had to drink. Then if you have a little old lady that reminds you of your grandma sitting in front of you asking the questions, you might give different answers than if you had a teenager sitting in front of you asking those questions. And so you can get a different bias from different ages, different genders, different ethnicities, different appearances. If I look all smart and professional, I might get different responses than if I look all dressed in my t-shirts and baggy jeans. So we can get these biases due to different interviewers getting different data from the same person. Another one is this thing called accessibility bias. So that's looking at how accessible is it. So for example, if we were doing a phone survey, not everybody has access to a phone. Not everybody chooses to have a landline. So there are some issues there that people that can't be accessed through that medium. And another one is our self-selection bias. So that's like our volunteers and saying, well, do the people who volunteer think differently to those who don't volunteer? Would I get different information from people who volunteer and people who don't volunteer? Accuracy, this is another big idea that we want to be aware of, is that we want to get the best data, most precise data that we can. And so one of the ways that we can do this is to make our survey anonymous or confidential. And that means people are more likely to give us more truthful answers. Whereas if I know that this information could get back to my mum or dad, maybe I won't tell them everything that they might want asking me about. And so that covers some different sampling or different survey methods that we can do.